Well, the recent looting and unrest in both Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal will undeniably have an effect on suppliers as they now try and recover. Well, Gauteng's Economic Development Department is warning shops not to inflate the prices of essential items. Of course, they're listed under the Consumer and Customer Protection and also National Disaster Management Regulations and Directions. Let's now speak to the Business Compliance Chief Director, Advocate Fati Manamela from Consumer Affairs as well. Advocate Manamela, always a pleasure speaking to you, and it's a good thing that you and I are having this conversation. We are already seeing reports, especially in KZN, of prices, especially in the smaller stores, being inflated. Just how serious is this, and what do you want consumers to do about it if they see this happening?
Yeah, well, it hasn't shown very serious to us here in Gauteng. We have also, received some few complaints in respect of increase or unfair increase of prices in respect of essential goods. And we have asked consumers, we have now circulated a news brief to say consumers should actually get into contact with us as the Consumer Affairs Office so that we could be in a position to investigate those cases where prices could be, unfairly increased, so that we could see how best we could actually assist in terms of, dealing with those complaints. We have received, as I've indicated, just small scale complaints in respect of, small, independent and somewhat unregulated dealers who operate in the townships.
So when we talk about consumers being able to contact you, Advocate, I'm going to try and get some details from you now as to how they can do that, a website, a telephone number. I'll get to that in a moment. Perhaps you can help me understand. I've always been curious. What is considered unfair price increases? We know that, got to do with interest rates and import costs. The prices of goods do go up and down. But when we talk about an unfair price increase, what is that range we're talking about?
Well, unfair price increases are prices that would generally be unfair to consumers, which are somewhat unconscionable and have got some element of being prejudicial to consumers in terms of affordability. You would remember that even though there is no price capping in South Africa in respect of goods, but you have, going prices in respect of certain commodities. And obviously, if that price actually passes the range that is generally acceptable in the market, then it becomes unfair. And those are the prices that would regard as unconscionable, prices that would regard as unfair and have got prejudice to consumers, because in the normal course of transactions between consumers and businesses, those prices seem to be unaffordable.
And when someone does suspect that there is an unfair price increase in this, what are you suggesting a consumer do, bearing in mind that when we're talking about essential goods, it could be something like bread, eggs, milk, wheat, sugar, etc., etc. What's the step you're asking people to take? Is it to confront the shop owner and tell them that they think the prices are too high, or do they rather leave the product and contact, as you say, the Consumer Affairs Office? What's the steps we need to take?
Well, obviously, we urge consumers to try and resolve cases at the shop floor. Part of the education programs that we render to members of the community is that they must be empowered, they must be able to assert their rights at the shop floor. Where they find difficulty, that's when they should actually call the Consumer Affairs Office, which could actually intervene on their behalf. So they should raise those issues with shopkeepers, the manager, and then see how best they could actually resolve the case, or ask them to actually reduce that price. And then we'll intervene where we find that the consumers have not been able to resolve that problem.
I mean, we've spoken quite a bit, haven't we, Advocate, about food items in particular as well. But I think if we were to break down some of the other categories that consumers need to look out for, and just unpack this for me, I'm also seeing emergency products and services, medical and hygiene supplies as well. It's not just the grocery basket we're talking about, is it?
Obviously, because remember when the disaster was declared, there had to be, usage of sanitizers, usage of masks, usages of gloves and all that. So those items would actually relate to, items that would generally be used for hygiene, obviously to ward off, any possible, infections in respect of COVID-19 and all that. So it's your masks, your sanitizers. Remember, sanitizers were very, very expensive. So it will be sanitizers, it will be your masks, it will be, certain other items that could use generally for your hygiene to actually ward off any possible infections.
Well, Advocate, always a pleasure speaking to you. Such an important conversation and such a simple solution as well for consumers watching this morning. Advocate, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. Advocate Fati Manamela joining us from the Gauteng Department of Economic Development. If you do notice something like that, I ran out of time with the Advocate, but very quickly, the email address that I have here on their website is consumer@gauteng.gov.za. That's the email address that you can use if you are suspecting any kind of illegal price hikes.